Welcome to Hong Kong Brief. The content of the briefing includes: Taiwan says US using all possible ways to strengthen it against China. BYD-Backed China battery firm Gelec weighs Hong Kong IPO. A trader's guide to navigating signals from the Biden-Xi meeting. Hong Kong stocks waver on new signs of China recovery weakness. DHL sees more China manufacturers joining offshore factory push. Taiwan says US using all possible ways to strengthen it against China. Financial Times. The US is strengthening Taiwan's defenses against a potential Chinese attack, including by training its troops, said Wellington Koo, Secretary General of President Tsai Ing-wen's National Security Council. The public confirmation of Washington's assistance and the reference to training Taiwanese forces could create additional friction when President Joe Biden meets Chinese President Xi Jinping at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum. U.S. law commits Washington to helping Taipei defend itself against military threats from Beijing, and it has long provided training for individual members of Taiwan's armed forces, such as F-16 pilots. BYD-backed China battery firm Gelec weighs Hong Kong IPO. Bloomberg. A trader's guide to navigating signals from the Biden-Xi meeting. Bloomberg. The first meeting between President Joe Biden and China's President Xi Jinping since Biden was elected is hoped to bring some relief to China's battered assets. The U.S. tariffs put in place by former President Donald Trump have largely remained under Biden, and Biden's curbs on China's access to advanced technology has not helped the relationship. An easing of tensions between the two countries may be the point where investors return to China. The country's stocks are suffering due to the country's property crisis and loss of global funds. Hong Kong stocks waver on new signs of China recovery weakness. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong stocks dipped as concerns over China's economic recovery persisted despite increasing bullish sentiment among fund managers towards Chinese stocks. The Hang Seng Index fell by 0.3% as of 11:15 a.m. local time, while the tech index dropped 0.9%. Shares in Tencent, Alibaba Group, JD.com, Meituan, and SMIC all declined, while electric vehicle maker BYD saw gains. HSBC, however, climbed 1.4% as U.S. Consumer Price Index data is expected to show a cooling in inflation, suggesting that interest rates may have peaked. China's credit expansion data for October also fell short of expectations. DHL sees more China manufacturers joining offshore factory push. Bloomberg. DHL is seeing an increasing number of its customers searching for alternative manufacturing locations outside of China, such as Southeast Asia, Mexico, and Turkey. This shift in trade patterns is likely to benefit logistics firms like DHL as they follow their clients and connect global trade paths. Companies have been working on managing risks in their supply chains due to export disruptions, geopolitical tensions, and trade restrictions. U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods have also prompted some businesses to shift their supply chains to Southeast Asia or Mexico. DHL is following the manufacturing companies as their logistics service provider and expects this trend to continue. The CEO of DHL hopes that U.S. and Chinese leaders can cool geopolitical tensions during their upcoming meeting. GIC chief says investors should prefer big tech to startups on AI. Financial Times. Singapore's sovereign wealth fund, GIC, is advising investors to focus on established tech giants, such as Microsoft and Alphabet, rather than overvalued startups in the generative artificial intelligence (AI) sector. GIC's CEO, Lin Chao-kiat, stated that the tech giants are already capturing value in the transformative technology through their existing customers. Startups with AI business models have seen high valuations this year, but Lim warned against getting sucked into the hype while remaining interested in the sector. Private equity firms get trapped in China after $1.5 trillion betting spree. South China Morning Post. Private equity firms in China are struggling to offload investments. With public markets offering unattractive valuations, firms are looking at private sales. However, secondary buyers are demanding discounts of between 30% and 60%, while in Europe and the US, firms are looking at discounts of 15%. Many companies are also setting up continuation funds to take over holdings for several more years, but this is also proving challenging. Rights versus security, whether Hong Kong or US, all must find their own balance. South China Morning Post. The recent controversies surrounding human rights and national security in Hong Kong, the US, and Germany highlight the complexities involved in balancing these two issues. The author argues that national authorities should be responsible for adjudicating cases where national security is at stake, as long as the decision-making process is subject to judicial review. International courts of human rights are unlikely to second-guess the efforts of national courts in these cases. The author suggests that the boundary between human rights and national security should be determined by each jurisdiction's judiciary. Hong Kong Talent Office vows to scour globe to attract workers amid brain drain. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong's newly established talent office, Hong Kong Talent Engage, aims to attract more workers to the city and retain them in the long term. The office plans to reach out to different parts of the world, including mainland China, to identify candidates and help them apply for available schemes. As of October 31, 70,000 people had arrived in Hong Kong under various talent recruitment schemes this year. The Top Talent Pass scheme received 54,000 applications, with 43,000 approved. The scheme is aimed at high-earning individuals and graduates from listed universities with working experience. China is using the world's largest known online disinformation operation to harass Americans, a CNN review finds. CNN. The Chinese government has built up the world's biggest online disinformation operation to intimidate U.S. businesses, politicians, and residents, and has used the network to threaten violence, according to a CNN investigation. The review found that the Chinese government's increasingly brazen tactics were conducted under President Xi Jinping and are part of a broad strategy to shape the global information environment and stifle critics of Beijing. The victims received thousands of messages on social media platforms, calling them traitors, dogs, and racist and homophobic slurs. The tactics are aimed at driving the targets into a state of constant paranoia and fear. CNN reports that U.S. law enforcement has been contacted about the issue, but has taken little action. Social media companies have shut down thousands of accounts, but the network creates new accounts virtually every day. The operation is known as Spamouflage or Dragon Bridge, and its hundreds of thousands of accounts, spread across all major social media platforms, target Americans who have criticized the Chinese Communist Party, discredit U.S. politicians and businesses that clash with Chinese interests, and hijack online conversations that could portray the CCP negatively. China eases rules for foreign investors in stocks and derivatives. Nikkei Asia. China is revising rules to attract foreign investors to its domestic financial markets. The revisions would ease requirements for registration and currency conversions for foreign institutional investors' funds trading in domestic securities and futures. The changes would remove the need for foreign investors to register under the Qualified Foreign Institutional Investor (QFII) and Renminbi Qualified Foreign Institutional Investor (RQFII) programs and allow investors to remit principal and investment gains in yuan. The new rules would also simplify account management and allow access to the interbank foreign exchange market. The changes are expected to reduce administrative and operational costs for investing in China. Guangdong unveils data transfer plans in bid to build GBA AI hub. South China Morning Post. Authorities in southern Guangdong province in China have released guidelines to facilitate data transfers across the Greater Bay Area, with the aim of making the region a national AI hub. The guidelines propose the establishment of a digital Bay Area that will include a special data zone to address blockages in the industrial chain and facilitate data sharing and transfers within the region. The plan will leverage the advantages of Hong Kong and Macau in establishing rules and mechanisms for data transfers and creating infrastructure for data storage, sharing, and transaction services. Guangdong Province aims to rank first in intelligent computing power by 2025 and build a 300 billion Chinese yuan, $41.3 billion, AI industry by that year. Hong Kong poised for Twin Germany test, head coach excited about next chapter. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong rugby coach Andrew Douglas is aiming to re-establish the country in international rugby. The new coach believes that playing more teams from outside of Asia will only benefit his side and has said that the opportunity to play more opponents outside of the region is vital for Hong Kong's development. Douglas has highlighted the recent success of Portugal and Chile at the World Cup as reasons for Hong Kong's optimism. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6 Degrees world. Let's dive into today's news. First up, we have Taiwan claiming that the US is using all possible ways to strengthen its defenses against China. This comes as President Joe Biden prepares to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum. Tensions are high, and any confirmation of US assistance to Taiwan could create additional friction. It's a delicate situation, and we'll have to see how it plays out. Next, we have Chinese battery firm Gelec considering an IPO in Hong Kong. This move comes after the company withdrew its application for a listing in mainland China. It seems that Hong Kong is becoming an attractive destination for Chinese companies looking to go public. Keep an eye on this one, folks. Moving on to the Biden-Xi meeting, investors are hoping for some relief to China's battered assets. The relationship between the US and China has been strained, with tariffs and technology restrictions taking a toll on China's stocks. A potential easing of tensions could be a game changer for investors. Will we see a turnaround in China's stocks? Only time will tell. In Hong Kong, stocks wavered despite increasing bullish sentiment among fund managers towards Chinese stocks. Concerns over China's economic recovery persist, overshadowing the positive sentiment. It's a mixed bag for now, but keep an eye on how things develop in the coming weeks. Shifting gears, logistics firm DHL is seeing more China manufacturers looking for alternative manufacturing locations outside of China. Southeast Asia, Mexico, and Turkey are becoming popular choices. This trend could benefit logistics firms like DHL as they follow their clients and connect global trade paths. It's a sign of shifting trade patterns in the region. In the tech sector, Singapore's sovereign wealth fund, GIC, is advising investors to focus on established tech giants rather than overvalued startups in the AI sector. The CEO of GIC warns against getting sucked into the hype while remaining interested in the sector. It's a reminder to investors to do their due diligence and not get caught up in the excitement. Private equity firms in China are struggling to offload investments, with public markets offering unattractive valuations. Secondary buyers are demanding steep discounts, making it challenging for firms to sell their holdings. It's a tough market out there for private equity firms in China. The recent controversies surrounding human rights and national security in Hong Kong, the US, and Germany highlight the complexities involved in balancing these two issues. The author argues that national authorities should be responsible for adjudicating cases where national security is at stake. It's a thought-provoking topic that requires careful consideration. On the cybersecurity front, officials from ICBC have flown to the US to contain fallout from a recent cyber attack. The bank is working to restore its systems after a ransomware attack disrupted its ability to clear US Treasury trades. It's a reminder of the growing threat of cyber attacks and the need for robust cybersecurity measures. In an effort to attract more workers and retain talent, Hong Kong has established a talent office to reach out to different parts of the world. The city has seen an influx of people under various talent recruitment schemes, and it aims to continue attracting top talent. It's a positive step towards bolstering Hong Kong's workforce. In global markets, Asian shares have risen slightly as investors await a U.S. inflation report that could influence the Federal Reserve's policy. It's a wait-and-see game for now as investors look for clues about the future direction of monetary policy. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room: China's online disinformation operation. CNN's investigation reveals that the Chinese government has built up the world's largest online disinformation operation to intimidate U.S. businesses, politicians, and residents. The tactics are aimed at driving targets into a state of constant paranoia and fear. It's a concerning development that highlights the growing influence of online disinformation campaigns. China is also easing rules to attract foreign investors to its domestic financial markets. The revisions would simplify registration and currency conversions for foreign institutional investors. This move is expected to reduce administrative and operational costs for investing in China. It's a step towards opening up China's financial markets to the world. In Guangdong Province, authorities have released guidelines to facilitate data transfers and make the region a national AI hub. The plan leverages the advantages of Hong Kong and Macau in establishing rules and mechanisms for data transfers. Guangdong aims to rank first in intelligent computing power and build a thriving AI industry. It's an ambitious plan that could have a significant impact on the region's development. Finally, Hong Kong rugby coach Andrew Douglas is optimistic about the country's future in international rugby. Playing more teams from outside of Asia is seen as vital for Hong Kong's development in the sport. It's an exciting time for Hong Kong rugby, and we'll be watching closely to see how the team progresses. That's all for today's news, folks. Remember, these updates are just a snapshot of what's happening in the world. It's a complex and ever-changing landscape, so stay curious and keep seeking knowledge. And now, I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on today's news? Any questions or comments? Let's start a discussion. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.